"He poisoned your drink," the black boy whispered. "Don't drink it." The words hit like a dart, fast and cold. James Carrington froze, his crystal tumbler hovering just inches from his lips. The boy had appeared out of nowhere, just strolled up to their white linen table in the middle of La Rue d'Or, the kind of place where even the napkins had weight. No one stopped him. No one noticed. Except James. And now, everything had changed. Across from him sat Daniel Reese, his business partner of 12 years. Tailored to perfection, charming as always, Daniel swirled his own drink with quiet confidence. His eyes flicked up, curious, but not alarmed. "Friend of yours?" he asked. James didn't answer. The boy had already slipped away, swallowed by a sea of waiters and quiet conversations. James looked down at the amber liquid in his glass. Glenrothes Reserve. Same as always. Except now, it looked darker. Or maybe that was just in his head. Daniel lifted his own glass in a silent toast. "To another big year," he said. James hesitated. The boy had said it like he meant it. Not like a prank, not like a lie. Like someone who'd seen a truth no one else dared to speak. His voice still echoed, "He poisoned your drink." James set the glass down slowly. "I'll toast in a minute," he said. "Just need a second." Daniel smiled, but his eyes didn't. James Carrington had built an empire on instinct, reading markets, reading people, knowing when something felt off. And right now, something felt very off. His drink sat untouched. Condensation slipped down the glass like cold sweat. Across the table, Daniel leaned back with the casual grace of a man who believed he owned the room. "So," Daniel said, "about the Singapore deal. I had my team run projections this morning." But James wasn't listening. He was watching. The glass. Daniel's hands. The flicker in his eyes when he realized James hadn't taken a sip. It was subtle, but it was there. A tiny twitch at the corner of his mouth, quickly swallowed by another rehearsed smile. James pushed his chair back an inch. "Actually," he said, "I'm gonna run to the restroom. Be right back." Daniel raised his glass. "Don't be long. The steak's already cold." James stepped away from the table, but he didn't head for the restroom. He slipped around the edge of the dining room, scanning for the boy. Nothing, just diners and candlelight. He turned to the waiter. "The kid, little black boy, maybe 10? Did he come in with someone?" The waiter looked confused. "I'm sorry, sir. We don't allow unaccompanied minors. No child has come through." James's heart thudded. Either the boy snuck past security or someone let him in. Either way, it meant this wasn't random. This was targeted. And he couldn't shake that voice. Calm, certain, warning him like a whisper from the future. He looked back at the table. Daniel was watching him now, still smiling, still sipping. James returned to the table slowly, mind racing. He still hadn't touched the drink. Daniel glanced at it, then back up at him. "That scotch is not gonna drink itself," he said with a soft chuckle. "Everything okay?" James slid into his seat. "Yeah," he said carefully. "Just weird feeling." Daniel leaned in slightly, voice lower now. "You've been twitchy all night. Nerves about the board vote?" James shook his head. "Not nerves, just thinking." Daniel gave a slow nod, then turned his attention to his steak, slicing it with practiced ease. "Well, while you're thinking, I'd recommend you drink that. Can't waste Glenrothes like that. Costs more than the damn wine list." James forced a polite laugh, but inside, every part of him screamed, "Don't!" He stared at the glass. Amber, still, innocent looking. A sudden thought struck him. "Hey, remember that scotch tasting we did in Montreal? The one where you got sick?" Daniel looked up, surprised. "That was years ago." "Yeah," James said. "But you didn't drink anything that night. Just sniffed the glass. Said you didn't trust the bartender." Daniel smiled faintly. "I trust who I know." "Exactly," James said, eyes steady. "So here's a question. If I dropped dead right now, would you call it an accident?" There was a pause, just long enough to notice. Then Daniel laughed. "Jesus, James, you really are off tonight." James leaned back. He needed answers, and he knew how to get them. He lifted his glass just a little and said, "Cheers, partner." Daniel smiled. But this time, the smile didn't reach his eyes. James didn't drink it. He just held the glass near his lips, watching Daniel's reaction more than anything else. And there it was again, that flicker, that tightness behind the eyes. Subtle, quick, but real. He set the glass down gently. On second thought, James said, "Maybe I'll switch to wine." Daniel tilted his head. "Since when do you skip scotch?" James shrugged. "Just a gut feeling." Daniel smiled, but something was shifting, the warmth in his face cooling by degrees. He picked up his own drink and sipped it slowly, deliberately. "Well, you know your gut better than anyone." James nodded. "That's how I built the company." Daniel chuckled. "And how you kept it so far?" That last part hit different. So far. James heard it like a loaded phrase, a warning, or a threat. But he stayed calm, thinking back, the boy, the timing, the drink. Daniel's insistence. The quiet pressure to toast, to sip, to relax. It didn't feel like coincidence. It felt like a plan. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone under the table. A quick, silent text to Marcus, his security chief. "Get eyes on Daniel." Quietly. "Something's off." As James looked up, Daniel was watching him with that same polite curiosity, but something had changed. The silence between them now was heavier, like two predators circling. Daniel cut another piece of steak and spoke without looking up. "You know, when you're the king long enough, everyone eventually wants your crown." James gave a slow smile. "Yeah," he said. "Even the guy who helped you build the castle." Down the hall, just outside the dining room, Marcus read the text. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. When James Carrington said, "Something's off," that meant trouble was already in motion. Marcus scanned the restaurant from the shadows, sharp eyes, slicing through elegance and candlelight like a knife through velvet. Back at the table, James kept the conversation light, surface level, like nothing was wrong. But beneath the charm, he was unraveling every moment from the past year. The subtle changes, the delayed reports, the meetings Daniel took without looping him in. Now it all made sense. Not mistakes, moves. "You still planning that Aspen trip next month?" Daniel asked, sipping from his drink again. "Maybe," James said. "You coming?" Daniel shrugged. "I was. Might push it." James leaned forward slightly. "Funny. I was thinking of taking a different kind of trip." Daniel arched a brow. "Oh?" "Someplace quiet," James said. "Someplace where you can hear yourself think, and hear the people around you lie." There it was. Daniel paused mid-chew. Not long, just enough to register. Then he smiled again, but his grip on the fork had tightened. Then, movement. The boy. James saw him again, near the kitchen entrance, watching. Just standing there like a ghost that didn't want to leave. James rose to his feet. "Bathroom again?" Daniel asked, smirking. James didn't answer. He was already walking, fast, weaving through tables, ignoring stares. But when he reached the kitchen door, the boy was gone. What he found instead was a folded napkin left on the floor. Just 5 words written in blocky handwriting. "He has done this before." James stared at the note, the words burning into his mind like fire across paper. "He has done this before." That changed everything. This wasn't desperation. It wasn't a last-ditch grab at power. It was patterned, practiced. Daniel had done this to someone, maybe more than one someone, and gotten away with it. James slipped the napkin into his jacket and walked back toward the dining room, his mind sharp and quiet, like a loaded gun. If this was true, and his gut told him it was, then Daniel wasn't just trying to push him out of the company. He was trying to erase him, wipe him clean off the map with a drink and a eulogy. He slid back into his seat. Daniel was scrolling casually on his phone, his scotch nearly gone. "Everything good?" Daniel asked. James nodded. "Yeah, Just got some news that makes things a little clearer. Daniel smiled. That's what drinks are for. James returned the smile. Actually, he said, lifting his glass, I changed my mind. And then he reached across the table and switched their glasses. Daniel blinked. What are you doing? Just wanted to try yours, James said, calm as still water. Since you liked it so much. Daniel hesitated, and that's when James knew. A sliver of panic flickered behind the calm. Just for a moment, barely visible, but it was there. You don't trust me? Daniel asked, his voice lower now. James smiled. Just curious. Daniel didn't take the glass. He set his fork down. You know, this is getting strange. James leaned in. No, Daniel. What's strange is that a boy I've never met just saved my life. Daniel sat perfectly still. No smile now. Just a blank, calculating stare. A boy? He said slowly. What boy? James let the question hang in the air like smoke. He wasn't going to give Daniel anything he could twist or deny. Instead, he nodded toward the untouched drink, now sitting in front of Daniel. You sure you don't want to toast? James asked. You were pretty insistent a minute ago. Daniel's fingers twitched once, then stilled. You're being paranoid, he said, his voice flat. Whatever that kid told you, he was lying. Or crazy. Or both. Maybe, James said softly. Or maybe he's the only person in this room who told the truth tonight. Across the room, Marcus entered the edge of the dining area, catching James's eye with a small nod. James gave a barely noticeable signal in return. Time to move. Daniel saw it. You called your guy? He said, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. Wow, you think I'm trying to kill you? James stood up slowly. I don't think it anymore, Daniel. I know. Daniel laughed once, sharp, bitter. You're losing it. After everything I've done for you, you didn't do it for me. You did it for control. And when I stopped being easy to control, he let the rest speak for itself. The poisoned drink, the fake smile, the boy who wasn't supposed to see. Daniel looked down at the glass, his own, and then back up, the mask slipping. You can't prove anything, he said. James stepped back from the table. Maybe not, but tonight, I don't need to. I'm alive. That's enough. And as two plainclothes security men approached the table from opposite sides, Daniel finally stopped smiling. Daniel didn't run. He wasn't that type. He sat there, jaw clenched, eyes darting between the men flanking him. Marcus and another operative James had pulled from private security. No guns, no handcuffs, just presence, quiet force. Sir? Marcus said calmly to James. Do you want us to hold him? James shook his head. Not here. Not yet. Daniel stood slowly, brushing his blazer straight, regaining that slippery calm. You think this changes anything? He said, voice low. Even if you're right, even if you had me on tape, who do you think they'll believe? You're one scandal away from losing half the board. I'm not looking for belief, James said. I'm looking for truth. And right now, I've got enough of it to stop you cold. Daniel leaned in just a little. You're bluffing. James pulled the napkin from his jacket and held it up like a weapon. He's done this before. That's what it said. Handwriting doesn't lie. And if he's done it before, there's a body somewhere, or a survivor, or a paper trail you forgot to shred. Daniel's mouth tightened. James nodded. That's what I thought. Daniel looked past him, scanning the restaurant, not for escape, but for reputation. Who had seen, who had heard, his carefully manicured image unraveling one thread at a time. I'd walk out quietly if I were you, James said. By the time you look up tomorrow morning, there'll be auditors at your office, a lawyer in your inbox, and me on every headline with a single story, the partner who tried to kill me. Daniel stared, chest rising. Then, without a word, he turned and walked. But James wasn't done. He scanned the room again. Where was the boy? James stepped out onto the sidewalk, the cold night air sharp against his face. The city moved around him. Cars, voices, flashing lights. But his eyes searched for one thing. The boy. He crossed to the corner, scanning every face, every shadow, heart still pounding. He didn't even know the kid's name, just that he was small, brave, and somehow watching when no one else had the nerve to look. Then he saw him, sitting on a low wall beside a valet stand, legs swinging, eyes alert, like he'd never left. James walked over slowly. The boy looked up. "Took you long enough," the boy said, not smiling. James crouched beside him. "How did you know?" The boy shrugged. "He dropped something in your glass. I was watching. People don't look at kids." James exhaled. That voice, still calm, still certain. "What's your name?" he asked. The boy looked down for a second. "Doesn't matter. It does to me." He paused, then mumbled, "Micah." "Micah," James repeated. "You saved my life tonight." Micah looked away. "Yeah, I saw someone die like that before. Couple years ago. No one believed me." James's chest tightened. He's done this before. Micah stood. "You gonna get him?" James nodded. "Already started." Micah looked up at him, small but sharp. "Then make sure people know. Don't let him hide behind his suit." James crouched a little lower, meeting him eye to eye. "I won't." Micah gave one small nod, then turned to leave. "Hey," James called after him. "You ever need anything, you come find me." Micah glanced back just once. "I already did." And then he disappeared into the night, leaving James with a truth more valuable than money. Sometimes the smallest voice sees the biggest lies. The next morning, headlines lit up like wildfire. Carrington partner under investigation for attempted murder. Anonymous tip sparks internal probe at Reese, Carrington Capital. Whistleblower child identifies poisoning plot at high-end restaurant. James stood in his office, watching the city from the 72nd floor, drink-free, hands steady. His lawyers were already working. Auditors combed through Daniel's files. The board was quiet, waiting, watching, shaken, but James wasn't afraid. He had the napkin in a plastic sleeve now, locked in a drawer. Marcus had found security footage, a brief glimpse of Daniel palming something into James's glass. Just a few seconds, but enough. Enough to prove a pattern, enough to open the door to everything Daniel tried to bury. But what stayed with James most wasn't the evidence. It wasn't the fallout or the press or even the close call. It was Micah. That boy, unnoticed, uninvited, unafraid, had walked into a place built to keep people like him out and changed everything. He didn't shout, didn't plead. He just told the truth. And James had chosen to believe him. He would never forget that moment. The whisper, the warning, the clarity. It had cracked through luxury, power, routine, and exposed something real. By noon, Daniel had fled the state. By nightfall, a prosecutor had called. And by the end of the week, Micah had an anonymous trust fund large enough to rewrite his future if he wanted it. James knew he might never see him again, but that was okay. Some people weren't meant to stay. They were meant to interrupt, to save. And sometimes, a whisper is louder than a scream. Truth doesn't always knock. Sometimes, it walks up to your table and whispers when no one else will.